Censorship has hit the world in a big way. We've already seen the suppression and removal of all dissent across the internet, but now it's hitting our weekend hobbies. After subtly imposing their ideology on fans for years, the AFL decided to take a more iron-fisted approach to people saying things they don't like. They decided to hire a number of men who are not Australian to patrol the stands and monitor the crowd. The Ministry of Love delightfully called them behavioural awareness officers. These men then ejected anyone who dared step even a little bit out of line, including one supporter who did little more than call an umpire a quote-unquote bald-headed flog. Fans and commentators alike rightly slammed the move, some calling it embarrassing and unnecessary. Others even dared to broach the topic that most would fear to tread. Former Victorian Premier Jeff Kennett pointed out the truth that most of these behavioural enforcement officers likely weren't even born here. Thus, we can hardly expect them to understand our cultural norms. Naturally, despite being milquetoast and barely touching the truth of the matter, his comments earned himself the ire of the usual suspects who slammed them as Murray. Remember, if you even slightly touch the issue of ethnicity and race, you must be a white supreme pizza. The reaction to the AFL censorship is what you'd expect from a healthy society. Fans have the right to enjoy the game, and that means saying things that pearl clutchers might find offensive. If you don't like the language used at the footy, you don't need to go to the footy. The thing is, this kind of overt censorship might be new to AFL fans, but it's been coming for years. This is only the latest manifestation of it. What we are seeing now is a symptom of a much deeper and more pervasive problem. A worldwide problem that's been getting worse and worse for years. Just a quick message. Whether it's an algorithm hiding content or outright deletion, internet censorship is on the rise. Please consider following me on free speech websites Gab, Minds and BitChute. I'm constantly posting content and they are a great way to stay notified of uploads. Can't wait to see you there. Anyone who's spent enough time on the internet searching for the truth will be fully aware of the attempt to silence and censor all dissenting opinion. It wasn't that long ago that online discussion was free, debate was robust, and people spoke their minds without having to worry about the ban hammer. These days, Silicon Valley censorship is par for the internet course. There is constant news of some new initiative or another. It doesn't matter who you are, all that matters is that you might have opinions that the dominant, established parasite classes don't like. If your views fall outside what they deem acceptable, then at best, they will have your content suppressed and hidden. At worst, they will remove you from the internet altogether. It's not just the internet that's censored either. Even in the real world, people are losing their jobs for daring to commit thought crime. Now, the censors are coming for your weekends. If you say something even slightly out of line, you're a chance to get yourself ejected from the great Aussie pastime of going to the footy. From News Limited, and I quote, "The AFL's ongoing issue surrounding a crackdown on fans refuses to die down and is leaving many asking serious questions of the league and Gillan McLachlan. A statement last week from the league's head office refuted any such crackdown was in place, but all evidence continues to point in the other direction. The furor erupted earlier this month when a Carlton fan was escorted out of an AFL game for claiming to call an umpire a bald-headed flog. Since then, footy commentators have criticised the AFL for its mixed messages about fan behaviour. It has sparked an angry backlash from fans, highlighted by Collingwood cheer squad leader Jeff Joffa Korf's announcement that he will be boycotting games until McLachlan issues fans an apology for how they have been treated this season. McLaughlin responded by announcing his interest in meeting up with the Magpies character, but is refusing to apologise. End quote. Gill and McLaughlin must have gone to the Joe Biden school of getting away with it. If he were to apologise after all, it would mean admitting error, and that might mean admitting guilt. Any apology must be of the Clayton's kind. More on that shortly. Unfortunately for old Gill, Australians still like going to the football, and this attempted censorship drew outrage throughout the football community. From Wide World of Sports, and I quote, "Richmond legend Matthew Richardson has joined a chorus of people slamming the AFL's crackdown on fan behaviour after fans complained of overzealous security guards. A pair of Carlton fans were ejected during the Blues' 3-point loss to the Western Bulldogs at Marvel Stadium, while another was seen wearing tape over the mouth, signifying that they weren't allowed to barrack. According to former St Kilda great Nick Del Santo, the AFL is headed down a dangerous path if they did not make it clear what behaviour is and is not allowed. The presence of seemingly overzealous security guards left AFL fans on social media fuming at the treatment." End quote. This move by the AFL to crack down on the free expression of fans has seen both players and fans speaking against it. It's almost as though people don't appreciate being told what they can or can't say in public by moral busybodies. It even has the most hardcore and dedicated fans threatening a mass boycott unless the AFL changes directions. An interesting development came when outspoken former Victorian Premier Jeff Kennett weighed in and dared to mention the elephant in the room. He said, quote, "The footage I saw was of people who, I don't know whether they were Australian born or whether they weren't, but I suspect they weren't. How is anyone going to judge anyone else's behaviour, let alone people who probably weren't born here, don't know the code, probably don't play it? Do they support a football team? How could they possibly have any understanding of our sport? Some of them have come from countries where they play soccer, and some from countries where no sport is played. How are we going to just employ security guards or people monitors without any experience at all to come along and sit in judgment of people who have been going to football matches all of their lives?" End quote. In essence, he's arguing that they have probably not assimilated to our culture enough to judge our behaviour in one of our cultural events. It's boomer tier civ nattery, but he's not lying and does make a good point. They weren't born here, and it's unlikely they understand our culture enough to police it. The choice for the AFL is clear: to keep pushing the politically correct agenda against the wishes of the fans, or go back to focusing on the football. Unfortunately, the AFL has a history of pushing a politically correct agenda, so rather than slow down and listen to the fans, they are likely to simply amend their strategy. After all, this is what Nine footy pundit and member of the establishment, Tony Jones, had to say about the matter, and I quote, "When you pay your money to go through the turnstiles, it doesn't give you the right to carry on like a pork chop. It doesn't give you the right to be throwing homophobic or racist remarks over the fence. That's got to be stamped out. But what it does give you the right to do is to barrack, and to barrack hard. And unfortunately, people aren't doing that as of this weekend because of fear of being ejected." End quote. Tony Jones is a member of the AFL privileged class, and he believes it's okay to barrack hard, but you still can't say things the establishment deems wrongthink. He wants to make sure you don't dare step out of line into expressing opinions or saying things the regime doesn't like. It begs the question, what do they mean by Ray Ray? The AFL claim they are dedicated to stamping it out, so it's important to figure out exactly what behaviour the AFL wants to stop. For example, they recently apologised to former footy great Adam Goodes for their supposed inaction over the infamous booing saga that tarred the end of his career. This was a big middle finger to all those who disapprove of Good's words and actions. Rather than be reasonable, the AFL cried "Ray Ray" and thus spat on the fans. Catalexy summed it up nicely, and I quote, "Goods had abused his privileged position to insult the founders of the nation and all the great Australians that followed. From this point on, Goods was shown the same respect from football fans as he had just shown our founders and ancestors. Of course, we weren't given the space in the media to vent our feelings, so we protested in the only way possible. We booed." During the Indigenous round of that year, Goods scored a goal and performed a war cry, which included a simulated spear throw at Carlton supporters. Apparently, simulating the murder of opposition supporters must be respected as a show of Aboriginal pride. However, as even Goods would have known, the Carlton supporters took great umbrage. Unsurprisingly, the boos did not stop. Towards the end of the season, Goods couldn't take it anymore and had a week off. He came back but retired at the end of the year without taking part in the grand final parade of retiring champions. Thus, Goods had an entirely self-inflicted sad end to an otherwise great career. Goods' aim was to become an Aboriginal activist in the style of Widmer and Long. If he has achieved that, it is at the cost of alienating a significant number of his fellow Australians. Be careful what you wish for." End quote. In other words, Adam Goods said and did things the fans didn't like, so they booed him. The AFL then responded by labelling the fans as Ray Rays and telling them to shut it. Most people watching this video should already know what the term racist actually means, and the Adam Goods saga proves this without a doubt. Rather than listen to the fans, the AFL told the silly Aussies to shut their mouths. But I digress. Thankfully, after much public pressure, AFL CEO Gillon McLachlan said these so-called behavioural awareness officers should go, adding, and I quote, "No one at the AFL is trying to stop our crowds being passionate or our fans barracking. No one. It is devastating to think that our fans think something has changed that is trying to limit their enjoyment at the footy. However, the AFL has a dual responsibility. We must also keep our game safe and family friendly. I'm apologising for people who are going along to the footy to have a day out who feel they haven't been able to do that. The venues make their own decisions about policing, about how they're patrolling, what they're doing, and how they're going up and down the aisles." In other words, he's sorry you feel that way. He's not sorry about pushing the agenda. He's not sorry about insulting the fans for years. He's sorry for how you feel about it. This is a predictable response. Those in charge will concede sometimes a little bit of ground due to backlash, but they won't ever change their overall anti-West agenda. But wait, it doesn't quite end there. True to form, and as expected, Gillon McLachlan continued to push the globalist line, this time attacking Jeff Kennett for supposed racially stereotyping. Then, because Conservatives never stand up and fight for anything, the former Premier simply backed down and apologised for daring to imply what we all know to be true. This is why we have the term cuckservative. The truth is, AFL fans have experienced censorship and abuse at the hands of AFL leadership for years now. Despite this, they keep going week after week because they enjoy the game and want to spend their time off barracking for their team or just watching the spectacle. The AFL misconstrued fan tolerance for approval of their agenda. Thus, the AFL took a step too far and fans bit back this time, but the agenda remains. The AFL will continue to shove political correctness down our throats regardless of this debacle. They are just another compromised institution taken over by outside interests now used to subvert our people and our culture. They hired non-Australians to police the behaviour of Australians at an Australian cultural event. Everyone should be angry about this. It's an insult to all true Australians, as the Founding Fathers intended. Worse than mere insult, these so-called behavioural awareness officers are a symptom of something far deeper and more pressing. They are a symptom of our cultural and ethnic decline and the current rapid move towards a totalitarian state. The same thing that infests the AFL dominates all our institutions, and unless we cleanse them of the beast, our cultural decline will only continue. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Share the truth around, and I'll see ya when I see ya.